All right, good evening, City of Newcastle, council members, and our amazing team and our audience. Welcome to the Newcastle City Council regular meeting for Tuesday, July 5. I would like to call this meeting to order. Will you please rise and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and just for clarity, Deputy Mayor Sherlock is joining us remotely tonight, and we do have her in the meeting. But with that, I will turn it over to Acting City Clerk Robertson for roll call. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, can you hear me? You know. Councilmember Griffin?
Here.
Councilmember Villasenor? Here. Councilmember Locotia? Councilmember Charbonneau? And Councilmember Clark?
Here.
And Mayor Newing?
Here.
Thank you. Sorry, just got to circle back. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a quorum tonight of 7. Okay, are there any objections to approving the final agenda? Hearing none, agenda.
Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councilmember
Thank you.
Clark, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion to swap on the general business items 11.1 and 11.2. There would be no change to the items, just a swap of the items.
Second. Okay, I can tell you the rationale behind that, if I may.
Please.
And I know there is a motion on the floor, but just to explain the reasoning behind that, the utility rates will require a little bit more level of detail. And the capital is, although we're not expected to make a decision on the utility rates tonight, the capital project presentation is an overview, a higher level. And in the interest of time, that is why we selected to do it that way.
So you just said we are not going to vote on the rates?
No,
tonight?
I did not say, oh, no, we're not expected to. We could still vote on them. But there is a presentation and some discussion about it, and if Director Brimes.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor. Did you just restate what you had said about not voting? I thought I heard you say we're not voting on the CIP.
We're not voting on the CIP.
Correct.
Right, it's a high-level presentation.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the rates is an overview and discussion, and we may or may not make a decision on those tonight. That was my understanding.
Oh, actually the action is to adopt those tonight.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion, but I just wanted to
Understand. Thank
state
you.
that. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to switch under general business item number 11.1 and 11.2, making the capital improvement program 11.1 and the stormwater rates 11.2. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? No.
No.
Okay.
So I didn't get a chance to speak to the motion.
I'm sorry.
Would there be a chance for that? So
Yeah.
perhaps it would influence some votes.
I haven't announced the vote yet. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not asking that we change these items in any rate, or excuse me, in any way. However, and I understand that the capital improvement plan is an overview. However, it does discuss the swim projects that are coming up for the same period of time that the rates are proposed for. So there's a lot of new council members here. And I simply would like to have that project presentation presented before we discuss the rates, because some of that stuff will come up again and it seems a little redundant. So it seems to me that the meeting would flow a little bit better. I understand your comments, thank you, but I just think we have a little bit better flow if we could discuss the projects before, with an overview before we discuss the rates. Again, I'm not asking to change any of the items at all, just the order. Thank you.
Councilmember Lakotia, anything to add?
No.
Okay, all right. Motion on the floor is to swap items 11.1 and 11.2. Again, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, please state aye.
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 Opposed? No.
No.
Okay, I heard 3 nays, so I believe the motion passes 4-3 with Councilmember Villaseñor. Did you? Okay, I apologize, I did not hear you. I thought I heard. Okay, I misread that. The motion fails 3-4 with Council Members Clark, Lakotia, and Griffin voting in the affirmative. All right, the business remains. Now back to the agenda approval. Any objections to the agenda approval as presented? Hearing none, agenda is approved. Public comment. Do we have members of the public? Mr. Flash, welcome. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and the neighborhood in which you reside. And we have a clock ticking down right on the edge of that table. 3. Yes, yes.
Ed Flash. I have been a resident in Newcastle for about 16 years. I live in the Milepost neighborhood. I'm co-president of the Newcastle Arts Council, and I sit on the Community Activities Commission for the City of Newcastle. And I'm here just to give you an update on the Arts Council and then a personal item as well. So first of all, I want to thank the City of Newcastle for supporting the arts in Newcastle. Why that is impactful is because the U.S. Department of Bureau of Statistics for 2020 presented a statistic that 10.3% of Washington's GDP is associated with arts and cultural activities. So that's pretty impactful as you think about it. That's higher than construction, actually, the construction industry. So supporting the arts and culture is really important to our economy, not only for the state, but also for Newcastle. I couldn't think of 5 years ago where it wouldn't even be thought of to support the arts in the city of Newcastle. So thank you again for those who've done that over the last 5 years. I have actually 4 activities and happenings that I want to relay to you. They're happening with the Arts Council. The first is our Newcastle Commons Art Walk. So this will be the 2nd year in a row that we've done this. It's July 23rd. I'll hand out a flyer when I'm done here. From 10 to 7, we have 40 art vendors and community organizations that are going to have booths represent themselves at the Newcastle Commons, and as well as some of our local restaurants are going to have food offerings there as well, and music throughout the day. So it should be really exciting. Come by, support the arts, support the community. Last year was really successful. It rained halfway through the afternoon, which was a bummer, but we're hoping for better weather this year. Second of all, we installed a mural at Lake Bourne Park on the back of our poetry wall. Some of you actually were able to support that in contributing to the mural. So we had 28 members of the community representing the City Council, the Planning Commission, the Arts Council, the Community Activities Commission, the library, our police force, both youth and seniors in our community that helped paint a square of this mural. So go check it out. It's at Lake Bourne. We're getting a great response from it, and it's a great addition to the park. It adds a lot of color as you walk across the field, and people can view it from there. We are hosting, along with Youth Theater Northwest, the production of Frozen, starting on July 15th, running through the 24th. It's at Risdon Middle School on the weekends. So if you'd like to know the exact times, go out to the Youth Theater Northwest website and you can get information on that. It's a great way to support our local. Was that my time? Oh, shoot. Okay. Okay, well, I'll stop right there if that's all I get. Thank you. Thanks for supporting the arts.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any public comment virtually? Okay. All right, I'll close public comment. We have no ceremonial presentations tonight. Council comment. Councilmember Charbonneau, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just say that thank you to city staff for working to provide a virtual setting for me. I see Deputy Mayor Schwag is taking advantage of that now, but providing that for me last week, and it was really great to attend the Association of Washington Cities Conference. I have a lot of great materials I'm hoping to share with fellow council members, with the Planning Commission, and with a lot of other folks on some good items and deep dives on some of the topics that we're looking at. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lakota?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Home Street Bank and the Scouts for the shredding event that happened a few weeks back. I think there was a lot of turnout there. And I also wanted to mention that Newcastle Library will be hosting the senior program. They'll be teaching, high schoolers will be teaching tech classes to the seniors in our community, and that's happening July 23rd, which is a Saturday at 11 a.m. for 1 hour, and then August 13th, again a Saturday at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Villasenor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a chance to attend the Bellevue fireworks event last night. My daughter, who plays in the Bellevue Symphony Orchestra, was supporting the fireworks, and they played before and after, and which was great, and it just was a reminder of the value of community gatherings, and hopefully I can help fill in some of the things that maybe Mr. Flash didn't get a chance to chat about. But not only the art walk, but we have concerts in the park coming up. It's a good chance to go to the park and check out the terrific mural. I'll give you a nickel if you can find out the square that my son and I painted. National Night Out's coming up, so that's an excellent opportunity for you to gather with your neighbors and get to know people a little bit better. Hopefully, I will get a chance to come to some of those events around town. It's really fun. Newcastle Days is coming, so there's a lot of opportunities, and I would like to encourage people to come out to those gatherings, enjoy themselves. Hopefully, hopefully the weather will get better some year, and we'll be able to enjoy our summer. And I hope to see people around town. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Griffin?
Thank you. I've been reading some of the comments from the citizens to the council, and we've had several people write in and say that they would like us to be more concerned about the sustainability of the city rather than of the pet projects and the businesses in the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark?
Thank you. I'm going to steal a little of the interim manager Larson's thunder here, but on his interim report, city manager report, he mentions about the Public Works Department completing 200 storm drains and catch basins. To me, that's impressive, and so I would like to just offer my congratulations to Connor and the team, and of course, Director Bronze. That's good work for our city. I would encourage people listening to come out to the open house, which will be on July 18th, Monday night, to meet our prospective city manager candidates. So there's been, I think, there was already a public announcement about that, I believe, I saw. But anyway, please come out, and it's your chance to meet potential city manager candidates. And Dave Vandewey will be leaving us in a few days, I believe, so I just wanted to express my appreciation for his services as well to the city. I don't interact with him very much, but every time I have, he's been helpful, and I appreciate it. That's it.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. Yeah, I'll definitely start out by echoing Councilmember Clark's sentiments about Dave Vandewey, who definitely will be missed, but wish you well in your new endeavors. And I happen to have the, excuse me, the Newcastle Arts Council email they just sent out. So I'm going to just also plug, they have a family watercolor night on Tuesday, July 12th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And they're also having an artist call for the fall art exhibition. And I'm sure you can find more information on their Facebook page and reach out to Ed if you have any questions. Excuse me. So I'm really sad that I can't be there in person with you all, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here virtually. So thank you to everyone who makes that possible. And thank you to all for the well wishes and get well soon. And special thanks to Councilmember Villasenor for dropping off some delicious Filipino food for my family and myself. So I know I talked a lot about, excuse me, wanting to find more opportunities for the council to engage with our community. And with the concerts at Lake Bourne coming up, I thought this would be a great opportunity to do just that. So after speaking with Mayor Newing and Councilmember Clark and staff, I'm excited to have the opportunity to give all council members who would like to participate a place at the concerts to be available to chat with residents and community members. So we're putting together details, and the idea is for anyone who's available and wants to participate, let me know what dates, what concerts you can attend, and we'll put together a schedule so that we can, we want to be mindful of quorum. So we're thinking maybe 2 council members per concert to be available. So let me know if you're interested and what your availability is, and we'll put together a schedule very soon. And if you have any questions or ideas, and just to be clear, this isn't mandatory, but I'm really excited for this opportunity for all of us to just have the opportunity to chat with people. So I think that's all I have. So thank you.
All right, moving on. So I have a few things, and unfortunately some of them are redundant, but I will go ahead and mention them. First of all, on my list is our meet and greet with the applicants for city manager. We have some very well qualified individuals. We're excited to introduce them to the community, excited to get to know them better, and move forward in this process. And that meet and greet is at Riston Middle School on July 18. That's a Monday, and the event begins at 6:30 p.m. with a casual, mingle with the applicants and others. And then there'll be some formal introductions and opportunities to hear them speak around 7 p.m. The event should wrap up around 8:30. Also, Dave Vandewey, I thank him so much for his years here at Newcastle. I'll tell you, if anybody can put development in and codes and zoning into lay people terms, it is Dave Vandewey. And I have told him many times how much I appreciate his presentations and how comprehensive they are to somebody without that level of knowledge and expertise. So I will greatly miss him, but wish him the best. And if you could please pass that along, Steve, I'd really appreciate it. Also, last week I had an opportunity to attend a groundbreaking for an affordable housing project with the Renton Housing Authority. It's actually their new building that will incorporate a mixed-use style with 76 livable dwellings, and this is actually one of the first, if not the first, project funded by House Bill 1590. And Governor Inslee helped open that ceremony along with Executive Constantine and representatives from our congressional leaders' offices. Very nicely run event. And that, I believe is all I have tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to any council committee reports. Okay. Regional committees? Anyone? Okay.
Sorry, Mayor Newing, I had a
I'm
report.
sorry. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor
So-
Sherlock.
That's okay. Thank you. Just that the Finance Committee met on June 23rd. Chair Bill Senor was not able to attend, so I ran the meeting and nothing, we didn't decide anything, and we just kind of went over all the normal snapshots, and everything is in order, and nothing major to report, but we're excited for the budget calendar is put together, and those discussions will begin soon.
Thank you. All right, we do have a written report from the Planning Commission. I don't see Chair Gatzik in the room, but Director Osgothorpe is here. If anyone has any questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to entertain those. All right, seeing none. City Manager Larson, what do you have for us tonight?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the community who may be listening in or watching. I want to go a little more detail of the city manager report to recognize several of our staff, along with the usual items. But at the top of the list is the May Creek Park Drive. The construction is well underway, and for those who are interested in knowing more about that, we've got a lot of detail on the city's website about that. It is a complete closure of that entire May Creek Park Drive between the 12,400 block and the 12,500 block, 24 hours a day. And I know that's causing some concern, but that's the best way to get this project done. So if anybody's got any thoughts about that, or if they want to, obviously contact staff, we'll be happy to explain that further. But the website does have a lot of detail. Surface water management repairs, I appreciate the council recognizing our staff, in particular Jeff obviously is the lead of that department, but also Connor Simonson is the crew lead, the manager of that group. And I also want to recognize by name the likes of George Miller, Jason Probart, Paul Hargehausen, Tyler Reese, and Ben Wynn. Those are the folks that if you ever see them out in the field, I wish you could take time to thank them. They went through I think a fairly extensive project and got it done in rapid time. So it really a great kudos to them and appreciation and commendations to them as well. So the finance staff, they've been a little short-staffed as of late, but I can assure you I've been checking in regularly, and I hear to say that they're performing rather well under the circumstances. I want to give a shout out to them as well. And then we just heard from Commissioner Ed Flash, but I also want to thank him and Chair Nathan Sticks for their work on the fundraising for the CAC. That's substantial amount, and we really thank them. Big kudos to them for getting the community support for those events. And then we've got our own Public Works Director, Jeff Bronze, who went out and got grant funding, it looks like, secured for the transportation, through the Transportation Policy Board of the PSRC for some projects coming up in the next several years. Thanks, Jeff. That's a lot of work, and appreciate your efforts. And then staff updates, with a couple of exceptions here. I want to note that the Community Development Director, the first review, we're going to extend that to the week of July 25th. And the rationale behind that is that I want to enable the new city manager to be involved, have them select their key staff. I think that'd be the only appropriate way to go about this. We do have some good candidates as of today, but I wanted to extend it out another 3 weeks and see if we can bring in some more candidates, but also allow that, hopefully that new manager to be on board to help with that. And I also want to thank Kate Langsdorf. She's been working really hard on these events, getting the community ready, and I know she's eagerly awaiting the part-time staff person who we hope to have hired here soon. We did send a letter recognizing that person and also offering the job to them, so hopefully we'll hear back from them this week. And with that, I know it's been said a couple of times, but I also spoke to Dave Vandewey today, thanking him for his efforts, but I appreciate staff, our council recognizing Dave as well. I also wanted to ask our Community Development Director, Steve Osgothorpe, to also have an opportunity to speak to Dave and his contributions to the community.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, I think the first thing we know about Dave Vandewey is he's got a great radio voice. I think he misses calling somewhere, but you know, we also learn not. He has a work ethic second to none. I have never had any drama with Dave. I've never had any customer complaints, no staff complaints, and I think that really says something. One example of Dave's just efforts to not make waves, to not create drama. I remember when he first started, not long after he first started, he came to me with a concern about another employee and their mannerisms in front of the public. And he didn't mention that employee by name, only the issue. But that was just an example of him not trying to create waves, but to try to bring about improvement and change. Dave has been utterly dependable. He works quietly. He's just a quiet kind of guy. But I've never had to worry about him meeting deadlines and doing excellent quality work. He's been a real resource to us in terms of our long-range planning, working with the county on buildable lands, working with the Planning Commission on all of our code updates. And as mentioned, his presentations are always just in layman's terms, very well prepared. And I just can't say enough good things about Dave Vandaway. He'll be sorely missed. I've just really enjoyed and have, it's been an honor for me to work with him. So I'm sure with you all, I certainly wish him the very best going forward and thank him publicly.
Thanks, Steve. Jeff, you had a comment? Go ahead.
Sorry, yes, thank you. I realize that there was an omission from the city manager update, and I'll take responsibility for that. One update that just more timely, an offer letter has gone out for the events and recreation coordinator. So cross your fingers. And then also Julie Casada, our Parks and Trails planner, her last day is next Thursday, and I regret that that didn't get covered in this in this update so that we could properly recognize her. And this is her second go around to the city, and her passion for parks and trails will sorely be missed. It's gonna be hard to make up for Julie's presence and dedication and hard work and just caring for the trail and parks community of the city of Newcastle. Wish her the best.
Thank you, and Julie is definitely one I've always appreciated, and her efforts and just her genuine interest in what she does. I mean, I just don't think I've seen that kind of passion from anybody in her position, and she's a very talented individual. I wish her well as well. And also, I neglected to mention one thing was our little drama we had on 116th last Friday with the cable coming down, and thank you to you and Bob and your team for getting out there. I know when I came back from the grocery store, there were the right people there within probably 30 minutes I was gone. So thank you for the quick response. I appreciated that. All right. Consent agenda. All right. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Villaseñor, seconded by Councilmember Charbonneau to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Moving on. Public hearings. Tonight we do have a public hearing. I believe Director Bronze has a brief presentation before I open that public hearing. The public hearing tonight is the adoption of proposed resolution 2022-886, the 2023 through 2028 six-year transportation improvement program. Director Bronze, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Actually, I did not prepare a new presentation since there was no changes, so I can just buzz through and get to the right appropriate slide. And just a moment, excuse me. There we go. So this is the unchanged draft transportation improvement program that was presented at the last meeting, and there were no changes or modifications received. So this is the tip that is before you for adoption tonight. And that would conclude my presentation.
That was record time. All right. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And any live audience individuals wishing to give testimony? Seeing none, I'll turn it back over to Director Bronze for some virtual activity.
There's no virtual activity, Mayor.
Okay, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. All right. So I am now asking if there's a motion out there from the council.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution 2022-886, the 2023 to 2028 six-year transportation improvement program as presented.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Griffin, to adopt Resolution 2022-886, the 2023 through 2028 six-year transportation improvement program as presented. Councilmember Clark, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
No comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Griffin, anything to add?
No comment.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion to adopt Resolution 2022-886, the 2023 through 2028 six-year transportation improvement program as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, I will be more mindful of that delay, so I apologize for that. All right, ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Moving on to item number 11.1. We have no unfinished business, by the way. Item 11.1, adoption of proposed resolution 2022-906, surface water management fee rates. This is all Director Braun tonight. Go ahead, Director.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I will try to, I will be happy to take questions if there's, based on any questions or issues related to the sequencing of these two agenda items. So with that, just have a few slides. Just kind of wanted to set the stage for how we get to where we are tonight, which is annual, well, I say annual, it's not always annual, it can be, but it's a regular update to the surface water management fees. So what started was back in 2017, we have our comprehensive stormwater management plan update. And you can think about it as a comprehensive plan for this first swim. And so that was adopted in September. And that informs our, well, actually, I'm gonna go through this real quickly. We have our comprehensive swim plan update, which then informs the rate study, which then informs tonight's actions and previous night's actions. So the last swim update was in October of 2020. I believe we were requesting updates for the years 21, 22, and 23, and the decision was revised to be just 2 years, and that was, I think, primarily because we were just in the leading edges of the pandemic. So this is the one I wanted to talk to. This kind of is a flow chart of how swim fees are developed, and I'd be happy to spend more time here for the benefit of the New York Council members. But we have the Comprehensive Stormwater Management Plan Update. That's an acronym I've not come up with a word for yet, but the CSWMP. So within that plan, we have an adopted level of service, which then informs the operational needs and the capital needs. And so there's a little mini version of the table there, which was attached to the SWIM CIP. That's the list of capital projects that were developed or reaffirmed in the Stormwater Management Plan Update. Then with that, so then you know what you're planning to do. Then you take that into a utility rate study, which combined with the fiscal policies and the forecast costs for operations and management, as well as the cost for the capital program, that determines a set of rates. And so this very small text table here, pretty much everything in a nutshell. It has for the planning horizon of the rate study, it shows the revenue assumptions, the capital and operations assumptions, and then the funding assumptions. So that then sets the stage for where we are tonight, which is annual updates to our SWIM CIP, as well as annual budgets updates, and then the SWIM utility rate. I guess it's feasible that we could have requested all 10 years be adopted, but usually that's a bigger action than is usually warranted. So we usually do it in kind of 3-4 year increments. So I mentioned before we were coming for 3 years and it was revised to 2. So here we are coming tonight for the next 3 years of increases. And these are the annual rates for single family residential. In Newcastle, swim fees are basically either you're in a single family residential home or you're in a commercial. And commercial means pretty much anything other than a single family residential. So the term is a little maybe misleading because if you're in a condo complex or an apartment complex, that's still classified as commercial. So you could think of it as single-family residence or anything else. And single-family residents pay a flat rate based on the parcel. Some cities will have a staggered rate depending on, they call it an equivalent residential unit or an ERU, and that's an attempt to be more equitable for a home that maybe is 5,000 square feet or has a lot more impervious versus a much smaller cottage-style housing. But one of the main obstacles to that is you need to have readily available either the whatever metric you choose, either the square footage of the home, but also you have to know how many stories because it's ultimately determined the impervious area, and we just don't have that data. So we just go with a single family rate, and a lot of our peer cities do the exact same thing. And then for commercial, so if you're an apartment complex or the YMCA or Safeway, you pay based on a rate per impervious acre. And so we have that information, the amount of impervious acreage on all those parcels, and then they take that flat rate, multiply it by the impervious area, and that determines their fee. So this is what's before you tonight for single family. And then here's the table for the commercial multifamily, which is like I said, a rate per impervious acre. And that's all I have for you tonight, but I know I went through that pretty quickly. Be happy to spend time answering questions if you'd like.
Director Bronze, I'm unable to see Deputy Mayor Sherlock, and I don't know if there's somebody who's watching her and can tag me.
Yes, let's see how we can do that.
Okay.
Let's see.
Now I can see her. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that any questions
right,
she
and I'm-
has can be addressed. So hidden by a presentation there.
Trying to remember how we can do that to get the presentation out there.
Or I don't know.
I can just do that. I can manually do it.
Okay, thank you. All right, any questions for Director Bronze? Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Bronze, you mentioned that, correct me if I'm wrong, in 2020, was there a year when we did not raise the rate because of COVID?
No, actually what happened was the rate study was adopted in 2020. So let's see, that's this one. Let me get Deputy Mayor Sherlock back on there. There we go. So in the swim study, the rate study was adopted in 2020, and it recommended 2 years of increases and then a flat 3% for inflation thereafter. And so the staff recommendation was the first 3 years. So the first 2 years of increase and then the first maintenance year. And in light of COVID, those first year 1 and year 2 were reversed. Or actually not reversed. The 3% went to year 1, and then the 2 years of increases were pushed to year 2 and year 3. And so year 1 of 3% and the year 2 of the larger increase were adopted. And then the second year of the larger increase is before you tonight. And then the for 2024 and 2025 is the flat 3%. So there's always been an increase.
Okay.
It's just the rate was lowered in light of COVID.
So considering that, we have hard economic times now, of course, and with the recession and all, what if the rate for this year was delayed another year? In other words, the high percent was delayed again. How would that affect your ability to complete your projects?
The short answer is I don't know. We've got some larger capital projects coming up. I would guess that some of those larger projects would have to be delayed, like the S17. We don't have the ability to have a spreadsheet. That's what I wanted to get, is the spreadsheet that the FCF's group had for when they did the fee study. Or we could potentially, not on the fly, but be able to come back to you with an answer. But the easy answer would be that some of the capital projects would potentially be delayed, because we would not modify our operations or maintenance. So then it would be any funding shortfalls, or not shortfalls, or delayed revenue would be impacted or on the capital side.
The largest project on the list was the S17, which was the
Correct.
railroad embankment. So
Right.
if, assuming that project is delayed you know, because we've completed the most critical part, right? And assuming that that project, the remainder of that project is delayed, and, you know, a year or two, would that, you know, impact the rates? In other words, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is could we still go with a lower rate this year if we push that particular project back a couple of years, seeing how it's not as critical at this point?
Yes, we can certainly do that. Just want to just kind of put things in context where the impact to a household would be $3.71 a month.
I understand, yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Director Bronson. I wanted to highlight and also ask about the sort of discounted residential rate. It says for seniors and low-income ratepayers. In 2020, that had been $142.94 per year. Would that be similar here? And I was trying to find how we qualify low income. But you said it seemed like it was following sort of a King County process.
Correct. It actually is. King County manages the, and I'm sorry I don't have the answer right in front of me. It is 50% of the single-family rate, so it would be $187.33 with the proposed increase for 2023. There's a definition, I believe it's in our code, what determines, qualifies for, it's either single-family low-income rate or senior rate. I don't know the rate. It's tied to a consistent county definition for what makes up low-income rate in terms of the certain percentage of the household income. And then the senior rate, I'm not sure if it's 65. I can get those answers for you.
Okay, and can you, thank you for that. And then the application process would be through the city or through the county?
I believe it's through the county because it's tied to, even, I don't want to commingle the difference between, because the city of Newcastle administers with 100% autonomy these stormwater rates. We utilize King County's assessor's office for collection of those fees, since we don't have a mechanism at the city to collect those fees, primarily because we don't have a water and sewer utility. But in terms of how, if the determination for what these thresholds are up to us. But King County, I believe, it's consistent with those thresholds for property tax as well. So it makes it convenient that if they're qualified for one, then they're qualified for both.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Director Bruns, can you explain the consequences of not having adequate bank of your rates for your capital projects and potential failure of infrastructure, significant failure, and what the cost could potentially look like and the devastation, you know, the impacts on health and safety?
Well, certainly one of the, as Councilmember Clark indicated, the Cygnus, and I'll see if I can bring this up here without hiding Deputy Mayor Sherlock. So this is from the 2020 fee study. I threw some kind of extra bonus slides in here. And what this shows is, basically the point is here, it shows that there's a forecast spike, as Councilmember Clark indicated, and that's for the S17 Phase 2. So that would, I mean, in reality, that would be the project that would be most affected by a potential change in the stormwater fee revenue. Now, this project is a desirable project, but it's not critical for our infrastructure because the Phase 1 work was completed in 2020. That was the most important work, was getting that inlet structure to be reliable. So that work has been done. The other projects I think would probably be okay in reality. It's, but there are the unknowns. So one of the nice things that, I don't have that slide unfortunately, but in the rate study it talks about maintaining an adequate minimum fund balance for operations as well as for capital, and that is able to provide you the coverage in case you have an unexpected incident or unexpected maintenance needs, and there's that jeopardy that by cutting your reserves down that you could then be bumping up against that minimum fund balance line for either operations or for capital.
And I feel like, you know, this is an old area as well as any other surrounding area, and we do have failing infrastructure, and we have a lot of hills. So I feel that's really important. I thought we may have had flood, and maybe we've already used that for phase one, the flood control district grant for the railroad embankment.
That is funding the phase two final
Phase two.
design, correct,
Okay,
correct.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah, there's $100,000 from the flood control district to fund the phase two final design.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I'd also have a question, or at least ask Public Works Director Bronze to also explain. I noticed on the, for that embankment project, it says assuming of the grant. And would that grant in any way be affected by our ability to have construction-ready plans? Or how does that normally work under the criteria?
We actually, we did assume 75% of that project construction cost would be funded by grants. And we've applied just last month for that same grant, Madam Mayor, the King County Flood Control District grant. We applied for the maximum $1.5 million for that project. And we did indicate in the timetable that we'd have essentially shovel-ready plans early 2023 is the anticipated completion date for the design. So that's the one grant program. We are looking for other funding options. This is where I'm blending into my other presentation. There's some information about that on the SWIM CIP, where we are trying to maximize our grant funding for that project, and we're looking for some fish passage funding. The flood control district is more focusing on the flood element or the hazard there, and we'll be looking for some fish passage funding to augment the city's financial package there.
And if I remember correctly, we already have the tribe, all of the environmental approvals for that project, which is very cumbersome to get and takes many years.
Correct. That was part of the phase two was a commitment we had to make for getting the tribe's approval to construct phase one. It was work in the river, and we had to manage a fish window. So in order to do the phase one work in the fall of 2020, that was a year plus of outreach effort that Audrey completed with the Department of Ecology and the Muckleshoot tribe to be able to get permission to construct that first phase.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Lakutia.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, seems like we already increased the rates by 13% in 2021, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So, we have been increasing the rates, and from my understanding, from what you've told us, it looks like the main infrastructure is completed, so it's not a dire situation that we are in for another rate increase. And as you mentioned, most other projects, we would be getting some grants. We'll be applying for grants. And so we are not in a dire situation.
Well, that's not exactly what I said. The dire, you never want to be in a dire situation. The rate study looked at the cost to maintain the stormwater utility. That's operations, maintenance, which is staffing, contractors, not consultants, but mainly contractors, as well as the capital component. So the two 13.5-year increases were to get us up to the proper funding level because we had not been adequately funding the stormwater utility all along. So that was to get us back up to our maintenance level and then be able to just carry ours through with a 3% annual inflation rate. So we did do one of the 2 years to get us up to that proper rate of funding. So the other year
So
is
we are
proposed
at
for
a proper
2020.
rate of funding for the time being.
I'm sorry?
We are at a proper rate of funding for the time being. Currently, we are sitting okay.
Well, the plan was to have 2 years of 13.5% increase to get us to the adequate year of funding. We've completed one of those 2 required years.
Okay. And then, let's say worst case scenario, even if we run into a situation where we need to put more funding into this, we still have ARPA to fall back upon, technically. Because
Sure.
I
mean, we could put on credit cards or take loan. I mean, I'm sorry. The prudent management of the utility is to properly fund it.
Yeah, but then we still have ARPA to fund it, worst case scenario, because that is cash that would be sitting with us.
Sure. But we've got the reserve fund to fund it.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Director Bronze, can you explain? So I'm looking at on the SWIM CIP draft in the 2024 year column, and you were talking. We keep talking about this railroad embankment project, but it looks like most of that is grants to pursue. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We have allocated 75% of the funding for that project is assumed to be grant provided.
Right. So the way that I take that information in is that these rate increases actually don't affect that project if that project is really, we're hoping to get grants for that. Is that a fair way to look at that?
That is a fair statement. I probably overlooked that I guess, because in my mind, I know that, but I should have pointed that out, that yes, even though there was a large spike in the expenditure, a significant component of that spike is grant funded. The spike being this S17 Phase 2 construction cost.
Yeah. And I remember in 2020 when we were having these discussions of these rate increases, the reasoning behind it, and it was a 7-0 vote for that council to maintain the service level that, and that's what we were deciding. Because we wanted to maintain a specific service level, and we were all in agreement on that, that required us to do these 2 larger increases initially, and then we could kind of do normal, quote unquote, 3%-ish increases from there on out to have enough money to maintain the service levels that we all agreed were what would work well for our city. Am I remembering correctly on that?
That's correct. And I'm sorry, I'm realizing that you probably can't see me, but you can hear me. So yes, the surface water management plan, when it was adopted, that was one of the primary factors in the discussion, which which level of service. And the level of service primarily was focused on the differences in capital and a little bit on the S38, the maintenance program. And so that was, yes, you're correct, that was unanimously adopted in 2017. And every single level of service still had a 2-year steep increase because the stormwater utility had not been adequately funded in the past for a variety of reasons. And so this, the FCS group, regardless of the level of service that was adopted, each option had a 2-year large increase, and then the rest of the planning horizon was a maintenance level.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not to put you on the spot, Director Bronson, we can talk about this more offline, but you were talking about fish passages and sort of the grants there. So I was really curious. I looked up the watershed recovery, what's the acronym?
WIRA 8?
Right, yeah, right.
WIRA 8, yes.
And I saw that we weren't sort of a party to their current interlocal agreement, and I wasn't sure if that would help make us more, attractive for grants and sort of committing to those items. I know we're supposed to send a representative to Raya.
We actually are on the, so I'm not sure what you're looking at, but I know so either something is inaccurate or, because I remember we took action here at the chambers because there was City of Everett left and then came back, and so I remember we took action to approve that amendment to the interlocal. But yes, and so, we are a contributing member of the WIRA 8, but their action plan does not include anything in the May Creek Basin, which is where this project lies.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sorry about that. I just wanted to.
No, it's okay.
Check everything.
Okay, further questions? Councilmember Villasenor, go ahead, then Councilmember Griffin.
All right. Thank you. I know that the swim management program is an absolute key piece of infrastructure. I think there are very few things less forgiving than water when it gets to a certain point. And I do recall the discussions that the council at the time had in 2020 regarding this vote. I have no intention of undoing what that council did. But I also know that, there's been a lot of talk about a focus on infrastructure and making that a priority. And to continue to pass this and to vote yes on this would be truly a focus on infrastructure in a way that, supports our community and keeps us out of larger danger if we don't properly manage this, properly manage the stormwater. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Griffin, go ahead, please.
The year we bought the building, we pulled $500,000 out of the swim account, which never got put back. I had recommended to be put back after we found the money that would take care of it, but that never happened. To date, we're looking to raise the rates on the citizens in an area where we have an economic downfall. We have ARPA money that is hanging out there that is looking to be spent in other areas. We're getting letters from citizens asking us to hang on to the money and use it where we can. And this would seem like a really good place to do that rather than raise the rates on the citizens. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Nguyen. I just have one more question, Director Braun. So there was, in the study, there was an assumption that we would need to incur $800,000 of debt, but with our current plan, that's, I understand, off the table now. So if we adopted the current rate structure, we would not be assuming that debt down the road. Am I correct?
Thank you. Yes, actually, thank you for bringing that up. You and I had a conversation about that today, and I forgot to bring that up. The rate study does assume $800,000 in debt funding, and I'm not thinking that we need that. The basis at the time of the study was to keep the schedule relatively fixed, and I'm of the mind now that the schedule for these projects is not so ironclad that we can't shift them a little bit if the funding's not there. So that's one of the reasons to keep the funding increase as planned to avoid the assumed debt in the rate study. And that was in 2024 for the S40 project, which is the Lancaster Basin drainage relief study. Not study, it's a project. So yeah, so that was one of the things that I forgot to mention. The assumption in the FCS group study from 2020 assumed, like I said, getting back up to the proper funding because it had not been funded properly in the past, meaning the revenue was not keeping up with the costs. And so they put in that $800,000 debt assumption, which they assumed, I think, is a Public Works Trust Fund loan, but it's still taking on a loan to pay for capital. And I'm looking at it now where we've done our expenditures on S38 in particular, and also the timeliness of the phase 2 of S17 is not such that we would have to incur the debt the way it's appearing now. You're welcome. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, I would entertain a motion. Anyone? Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Move adoption of Resolution 2022-906, adopting updated surface water management fee rates for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025 as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Charbonneau, seconded by Councilmember Villaseñor, to adopt Resolution 2022-906, adopting updated surface water management fee rates for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025 as presented. Councilmember Charbonneau, would you like to speak to your motion?
I'll be brief. I think it's a critical item, like was discussed by Councilmember Villaseñor, and something that we should give ample attention to and make sure we're planning. I appreciate the staff's effort to come up with these rates. I appreciate all the work put into sort of outlining all of this and creating a plan that works for us for the moving forward so residents don't bear too much of a burden all at once.
Councilmember Villaseñor, anything to add?
No additional comments.
Thank you. All right, the motion on the floor is to adopt Resolution 2022-906, adopting updated surface water management fee rates for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025. As presented, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
No,
All opposed, please say nay.
nay.
Nay?
Okay, ayes have it 5-2 with council members Lakotia and Griffin voting against the motion. All right, congratulations, Director Bronze. You're done with 2 out of 3. We have one more. It is your night.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We are moving on to discussion 2023 through 2028,
Ooh.
Parks and Surface Water Management Capital Improvement Plan Review. Go ahead, Director Bronze.
Let me clear out all these presentations here.
Okay. And Deputy Mayor Sherlock, I know you're there. Bear with us, and we will catch you when.
Is the council's, sorry, Madam Mayor, to interrupt, is council's preference that I have her on the screen? I can modify that to do that.
It's my preference, but I understand that we want to be able to view the, and the charts and everything are in the packet, so.
Right. Well, I can be agile and flip
Okay.
back and forth.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
All right, so now we have, we talked about the swim fee, and that funds our capital. Well, it funds operations, maintenance, and capital. And I don't want to underestimate that because you do your operations and maintenance before you would do capital. So this is the capital, and we'll talk about parks first, and we'll talk about stormwater. Oops, and I lost Deputy Mayor Sherlock. Let me do some screen management here. All right, let's do this manually. Okay, let's see. And when I come to a table that, I'll make the screen bigger. But I want to thank Councilmember Clark for his question earlier today. It was more in particular towards stormwater, but I did neglect to take a moment to share where these projects are coming from. So both with transportation that we talked about last meeting, as well as parks and stormwater, there's a planning document that forms the basis for where these projects are housed. As it may seem, we don't just dream up these projects and then throw them on these lists. They are dreamt up on a larger project list. And for parks, that is the Capital Facilities Appendix, which is table CF1 in the Comprehensive Plan Appendix. And it looks at kind of look at it as a master project list. And so that's looking at a 20-year planning horizon. It was last updated in 2020, and it was done in concert with the update to the Parks and Trails impact fees. So that list was revised because that forms the basis for the impact fees, similar for transportation. And this is Exhibit 5 in your packet tonight. Oops. And so here's the adopted capital budget, and the numbers are, it's not really relevant, I guess, for you to see them right now. But one of the things that's a little challenging is this table does not exist in this exact form as last year's because now we're using ClearGov. So this is actually the Parks Investment Fund, and I just took off the revenue so I could fit the expenditures here. So just wanted to clarify that in all transparency. So if you look for this exact document, this is there, but it's the expenditure side is down below the revenue side in the adopted budget. Oops, I keep doing that, sorry. All right, so here's 2022, which is our adopted capital budget right now, and I'm just going to go over some of the changes that are being proposed for the 2023. So first we have 2 additions, and I'll kind of go through them, and then we can either have questions as we go through them, or we can stop on the proposed CIP table and then handle questions. Either way, whichever works. So 2 additions. I say they're additions on our 6-year planning horizon, and those are 2 additional implementation phases for the Lake Bourne Park Master Plan, and that is the amphitheater and the off-leash area. And another added project is the May Creek Pedestrian Suspension Bridge, rather. And I've got a slide for each one of those here. So the master plan, the highest ranking project, it ties the current project that is the Crosstown Trail in Lake Bourne Park. That's from the public survey that was conducted as part of the master plan process. Would construct a new amphitheater in the North Loop area, as well as do some improvements to the Newcastle Plaza, and those are the artist renderings there up in the right and the lower left. It's currently in the 6-year plan proposed for design. PE stands for preliminary engineering. That's for 2024, and then construction in 2025. And based on our success with the King County Parks levy for the Lakebourne Park Crosstown Trail project, we are a little bullish that we might be able to be positive in grant funding with this, as well as potentially the RCO, the Recreation and Conservation Organization, the state grant agency. Some pictures fresh from Connor. The lower left photo looks like a great stage, but there's rotted wood. We had to replace several sheets of plywood, and I guess it's not a handrail, but like a curb rail, and there's rotted wood kind of in multiple spots. So the timeline is ticking for this structure, and it does require annual several hours or days of effort to maintain it in its current state each year. And let's see, the other project is the off-leash area, which was also a popular amenity during the master plan discussion. I've circled that in blue. We don't have an artist rendering for it, but it's basically it's in the 2 parcels that were acquired by the city a few years ago, and it's just to the east of the tennis courts and just south of the Crosstown Trail improvements that are getting ready to be advertised for construction. The other project is the May Creek Pedestrian Suspension Bridge. This is a high priority in the capital facilities plan, and it would take the May Creek Trail right now, and when you're in the southwest corner of the city, the May Creek Trail just ends because you approach May Creek, the river valley there. And there's a primitive trail that you can walk down to the river, and depending on the water flow level and depending on what's there's been some primitive rocks, and sometimes there's boards to get across, but it's not a reliable crossing, and effectively it stops future development of the trail. So I know that Newcastle Trails has been very proactive in working with City of Renton to try and make the future improvements to the trail in the west part of their capital plan, so that once this bridge is provided, that then there would be a trail to go to connecting in the west. And this is a photo of the May Creek Trail, roughly in the approximate location this bridge would be constructed. Let's see, a couple of other schedule changes to the capital budget. We were fortunate to have grant funding for 2 projects from the legislative session this year. That was the cemetery fence as well as the Lakebourne fishing dock. And the fishing dock needs are greater than the cemetery fence, so we're proposing to push the cemetery fence back a year so we can focus on not only the Crosstown Trail in Lakebourne, but also the fishing dock repairs in 2023. And then just comparing from the last 6 year CIP to this year, that fishing dock repair project, as a benefit of the additional grant funding we received, we added some work on the decking. The decking is getting really rough out there and either needs to be replaced or refurbished. So here's the grants that I just alluded to. We had 2 legislative grants that we were fortunate to receive from our lobbyist, and that will pay 100% of the construction costs for those 2 projects. The P12 is the cemetery fence, and P28 is the Lakebourne fishing dock. And then the $500,000 funds a little over a third of the construction for the Crosstown Trail in Lakebourne Park. Then we're planning, I indicated this a little earlier, keeping our eyes on that same King County Parks levy for the future phases of the Lakebourne Park master plan improvements, both in 2025 and 2027, as well as future legislative grant capital opportunities provided by our lobbyist. So summing it all up, the 6-year CIP goes up quite a bit, and that's the reason. There's 2 reasons for that. One reason primarily is that we're fortunate to have a lot of parks impact fee revenue, and that I'll show on the next slide. And that's because of the 200 plus homes that are in the pipeline right now. So that gave us the opportunity to still fund greater improvements, but still having a 6-year surplus in the capital fund for parks. So the funding allocation there is roughly 38% parks and impact fee. So that's our largest contributor towards the revenue of the capital for parks is the Parks and Trails impact fees. So I will make this one a little bit bigger here for a moment. Let's see. Oops, sorry, should hit the wrong function key. Oh, did it again. You know what? I'm sorry. This this computer is not configured the same as mine. So I need to go present from here. Well, not to do that on this computer. Sorry. Note to self. Make sure. There you go. Okay. So this is where I wanted to pause and just allow time for questions, discussion. This is the proposed 6-year CIP for parks, and then it's augmented from the exhibit that's in your packet, and it's highlighted whether there's a schedule change, a funding change, or a new project, which is the May Creek pedestrian suspension bridge. And down on the bottom there, it shows the Parks and Trails impact fees in this $1.483 million for Parks and Trails. That was over $1 million increase from last year when we did this, and that's from the benefit of the projects coming in, the Hill Plat as well as the Heemstra assemblage, and neither of those two projects had been in the budget forecast for last year because of where they were in their application state.
Okay, so first of all, I want to defer to Deputy Mayor Sherlock because I cannot see her right now. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question that I actually asked Director Bruns earlier today. I keep asking about the boardwalk in Hazelwood Park, and it's in pretty bad shape right now, and so I don't really see that on this, but Director Bruns, if you could speak to that project.
Certainly, I'd be happy to. So there's kind of a non-official breaking point at which something would rise to be called out as a specific CIP project versus just going into our maintenance budget. And that's maybe around $20,000. So the Hazelwood Boardwalk, well, actually, let me back up. So for instance, the fishing dock repairs, that has been in the budget for a couple of years, but it was not on the capital. It was listed under the parks maintenance budget. And quite honestly, the reason that it didn't get completed was I think there's initial assumption that we could do it in-house, and then after taking a closer look at it, it's going to involve a diver to do some work to the anchoring chains. And so that extra involvement combined with the extra funding that we receive from the capital allows us to address the decking. So then that came on to the 6-year CIP last year because the funding level increased kind of above that maintenance threshold. So getting back to Deputy Mayor Sherlock's question about the Hazelwood Park Boardwalk, that's kind of right at that threshold where we don't have an actual cost estimate for that work, but we had thought that it would be not something that we'd elevate as a individual capital project, but rather cover under the P5 Parks and Trails or just straight under the maintenance budget. But I appreciated her question coming up because it's good to have something like that called out so that there's some certainty when it's going to be constructed. And I when we talked earlier today, that is on our plan to do that work next year, to do those repairs to the boardwalk.
Thank
and
you.
we just don't have a cost right now.
Thank you. All right, questions on parks? Councilmember Lakota, go ahead, please.
So you were talking about the 720K surplus. So seems like we are in a healthy situation when it comes to our parks fund. So we can still pull from the surplus if we need to, right? If there is something more that we would like to do. Let's say in Lake Boren, some more improvements or things like that.
Certainly, the council has discretion where to, no, actually, I want to preface this. There's the reserve fund, and I'm not sure exactly what the constraints are to what that can be used for, because there's usually a big distinction between capital and operations. But I believe that the reserve fund can be used whatever the supermajority determines its use should be. But you are correct, Councilmember Lakota, this shows it's right here in the bottom right-hand corner, the 795 is now this does assume $750,000 of grants that it's indicated as grants to pursue. So should either of those two and that's not a coincidence, that should those two grants not come to fruition, then this would be down to about $45,000. So
Yeah,
it's
but
still balance out.
Yeah, but still we are in, and when you
But
say
still being
reserve,
positive.
meaning, yeah, reserve meaning it's the parks reserve, right? Which is just dedicated to the parks.
There is no Parks Reserve, no.
No, these cash flow, right, here.
Oh, yes, this is just for Parks Capital.
Yeah,
Correct.
so we can still pull it from the capital, like we have enough surplus in there.
There's actually one of the, there is not a specific, the parks, actually, I'm sorry, Stormwater, I'm getting ahead of myself. Stormwater does not have a broken out capital, for Parks does, yes, so there's Parks Maintenance and Parks Capital, so yes, that would be going into the Parks Reserve. I think I was getting confused, there's not a dedicated Parks Reserve fund, it's just the overall, like at the beginning here, we have 1.658 coming from the beginning fund balance, which is just what's left over from 2022.
For the parks only, right?
Correct,
That
Parks
means
Capital.
Parks Capital.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to state the fact that looks like we are in a good situation, and
Very good, thanks to the park impact fees that, from those two developments I mentioned.
yeah, so it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around. Just doesn't make sense to me to use any of the ARPA funds for the parks, because looks like we are in a very good situation for the parks. So, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Nguyen. Director Bronze, I'm looking at tree mitigation planting where it was budgeted for 106 and we projected 45. And the only reason I bring that up is because earlier on we were told about the old practice of fee in lieu of for trees. So we didn't lose any money here. This is separate. Is this a separate amount?
No, actually, and thank you for bringing that up. So this is a case where you're transparent, so you put the actual numbers up there, but a lot of the numbers have a story behind them. And for whatever reason, so the tree mitigation planting, that is the past practice. I want to reiterate, we've not been doing this for several years, but the past practice was essentially the developers could pay their way out of tree retention. And so the city had built up a fund of several $100,000, and it had to be spent on trees. And so we've been working our way down to try and expend those funds. They have a 5 or 6 year clock on them, if you will. And the $106,000 that should not have been, well, I think there's a timeline between when the budget was adopted. There was a dollar amount that was refunded to a developer, thanks to a former council member that initiated that process. So that number was then reduced to $45,000 based on that refund.
So we didn't lose any money here, I mean, on this.
The
really.
tree fund, there's $45,000, that's not the exact amount, but it's roughly that amount, was credited back or refunded to the developer because it had not been expended within that time horizon, the mandated it's either 5 or 6 years.
And that's what that 45 reflects?
No, that's the well, indirectly. So the 22 budget is what's in the current adopted budget, and then the projected is where we expect to spend at the end of the year, and that's all that's remaining is $45,000 because and I realize that 45 and 45 is 90, not 106. So I think there's some staffing charges that are not exactly captured here. But that's the reduction, is to reflect that refund that occurred in 2021. And I honestly do not know why. I think it was an oversight that was not captured in the adopted 22 budget.
Thank you.
So it should have been equal, because that refund occurred in, oh, you know what? I just remember what it was. There was and I'm playing finance director for a moment. There was an issue, the refund check got issued, it got lost, they couldn't find it, and they reissued the check, and then by the time, and even if a check is outstanding, the check had to be cleared, and it did not clear by the closing date of the 2021 budget. So then it had to stay so that at the end of we go about a week or two into the 2022 calendar year when things can still be allocated to the 2021 budget, and at that time that check had not cleared, so that's why it is still shown in the 2022 budget. The check has subsequently been cleared though, and so that's why that's the amount remaining in the tree fund. And we have a contract that's been awarded to do citywide tree planting, that's P23, and that will exhaust the remaining funds in the fund, the funds in the fund. You're welcome.
Councilmember Charbonneau, I think you wanted to speak about the time I called on Councilmember Clark. Go ahead, please.
Right, yeah, thank you. I wanted to flag for you, Director Bronze, I've talked verbally with one of our representatives, and there's also some folks of our Arts Council, that when we're looking at the amphitheater for sort of the Lakeborn Master Plan, there are some potential community partners there. There's a youth theaters group in Mercer Island. I talked about this with City Manager Wyman before he left as well, too. And just flag that for folks as a means to try to have those conversations about getting community partners. Oftentimes it takes sort of having the project outlined and having some, framework and moving forward with that there. I want to, because I noticed you didn't have it on the potential funding sources. I think that's definitely something I'd be happy to put time into as a council member and other folks can address. And then I was curious too, I don't know if it was encompassed by sort of the further down the sports parks, but I was curious, do we have any plans for the property we own along 95th, sort of the, you know what I'm talking about,
Yep.
sort of where the
Yes.
our city limits almost end?
Correct. So the first thing, thank you for pointing that out. Essentially the design for the amphitheater is at a very low concept level, so just a location and kind of that's about it. So that would be something that would be in the early stages, is looking at what were the potential uses, and that might drive what amenities are included. And so thank you for pointing that out about possibility of partnering with other community groups. So then the 95th Sports Field Complex, I don't have a clear history other than that there was, that property was purchased, and I recently learned right before the pandemic it was purchased through grant funding, because I got an email from RCO, which is the Recreation Conservation Office. They had a compliance inspection, and they said, well, you purchased this land for a sports field, and it looks like it's a maintenance yard. Now, what's going on? And then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and so that's on my list of things that was, one of the interesting things about working for such a small city is you find things out like that indirectly, that land was purchased for a grant. So that being said, yes, there was a I'm not sure what level study, but there is a document, it's on the city website under community planning for I would call it a regional, meaning it would attract more than just Newcastle, a regional sports field complex of 2 or 3 ball fields, a couple soccer fields, related amenities. And that was completed, I'd say around 2008, 2009, potentially. So I think there's probably no coincidence that lost a lot of momentum right when we had the recession at the end of the 2010s. So there was an effort, and it's just kind of there. And I think that was also the same time when there was a big leadership change at the city. So maybe that had something to do with that project not going forward any further. There was some interest in at some of the Newcastle Chamber meetings before the pandemic. Tony Ventrolo was one of the advocates for that, and well of a couple of other community members that were really interested in trying to kind of get that going again, and then the pandemic hit. So currently there's no plans to bring that forward in the short term. I believe I can check, but I believe when we did the update to the capital facilities plan appendix, it's either a medium or a low priority, but definitely not a high priority.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I have a question. So regarding the cemetery fence, we were blessed with legislative support for that project, and I understand that there are other pressing projects. I know the dock is a huge priority. But is there any possible way we could move that up to 2023?
The
Or
one
is
thing
it-
I didn't mention is its workload, it's staff availability,
That's what I
and
thought.
losing our Parks and Trails planner that would have and the potential experience of Julie's replacement would have a big impact on that. So as being more conservative in terms of what our capacity could be to manage projects, maybe there's a possibility that we combine. No, never mind. Sorry, that's what I get when I talk and think at the same time. We wouldn't want to combine those projects because the dock and fencing are two very drastically different types of work. So we wouldn't want to combine those. We can certainly try.
I knew the answer to that question, but you also know me where I'm going to ask, I
Sure.
can take no for an answer, and I kind of figured that was the rationale. It's just when I meet with the lobbyist in the fall, I
Oh,
want to
sure.
be able to explain that.
I think
And-
staffing is the easiest thing to explain. And by the time you meet with the lobbyists in the fall, maybe we'll have that position filled and maybe they'll have capital experience and we can move it back up.
You rock. Okay. All right. Okay, I see,
Perfect.
let's go to
So,
stormwater.
Again, yeah, thank you. Just to reframe the discussion, we're just looking for input. The next time effectively you'll see this will be when we come back discussing the preliminary budget. And actually towards the end of that process, it'll be the capital budget. During the budget retreat or budget workshop, we typically don't get to capital, but that doesn't mean that can't be discussed then. So we'll take any input you have and then that'll inform the preliminary budget for 2023. So that being said, on to stormwater. So here again, thanks to Councilmember Clark for his question about this. And let me move Deputy Mayor Sherlock a little bit. So similar to the Parks CIP, there is a underlying planning document that informs the selection of capital projects. And for stormwater, it's our comprehensive surface water management plan. So again, I would kind of akin that to the comprehensive plan, but more focused on not only capital, but the operations. So is this one, the current version was adopted in 2017. It looked at a 10-year framework versus the comprehensive plan, which kind of has a longer time frame for the capital. It's updated about every 6 to 10 years. So we're getting close to that point where we're going to want to look at it again. And then, like I mentioned during the swim fee, this is the foundational document that then goes into, it's one of the major inputs into the swim study that then informs how the projects for capital are funded. And this is Exhibit 6 in your packet. One of the, I realized too that this is a historical document, but it does not have the S numbers after the projects. Some of them are more clearly connected from the current budget, like the railroad embankment, Newport Hills Creek, that's the S17. But for instance, at the bottom of the list, the Southeast 90th Street Drainage Improvement Project, that's S41, which currently is called 116th Avenue Drain. We tried to align the title to be more closely to what we're doing. So there's a couple on here that if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help provide a crib sheet to connect this to the current capital budget. So again, here's a snapshot of the surface water management budget for 2022. And similar to parks, this document exists in the adopted budget, but it has a revenue line in there. And be able to fit it on the screen and be able to still read it, I just snipped out the revenue portion. Unfortunately, the ClearGov doesn't have the ability to display this information in this format. So the changes to the 2022 adopted budget, primarily due to staff turnover and just that transition, the completion of the final design for phase 2 is shifting to 2023 instead of 2022. And then similarly, the S40 we had planned to be underway with the design, and that's shifting to 2023 as well. And then we don't have any new projects in SWIM, so we jump right to the 6-year summary. Again, similar to parks, there's a larger increase, not as much as parks, but a significant increase, about 33% to the expenditures. Part of that is inflation. Majority of it's inflation, and adding on when you add year 6, then that, depending on what year 6 was, it can add as well. So that was, but still, with that being said, we have a surplus of 1.1 million, and I want to couch that because parks capital and parks operations and maintenance are 2 separate funds, whereas swim operations and maintenance and swim capital are all under the swim fund. So when we get to the next table, there'll be a beginning fund balance, and there's not a way easily to break out the beginning fund balance for swim capital and swim maintenance since it's all one fund. So I just rounded to $1 million as the beginning fund balance, but I just wanted to put a footnote to that number. And if Don was here, he'd probably be able to more eloquently put some details to that. Oh, sorry, I want to go back. So the majority of the funding comes from the rate funded capital, which is the pie chart, the 55%, that's the stormwater fees. And then roughly a third of it is anticipated grants or grants to pursue. And I'll go over that just a little bit more here. So awarded grants, we have $180,000 of grants right now, and that's the first grant there listed is the one that Mayor Newing mentioned earlier, and that's from the King County Flood Control District. And we also have a Waterworks grant that Councilmember Dunn was instrumental in helping us secure, and that's for the Landcastle Preliminary Design and Outreach Project. And then we have plans, I mentioned we applied for the King County Flood Control District for $1.5 million for the Phase 2 construction of S-17. We're meeting with them later this month to go over the review of that. And then I just put in brackets fish passage funding for, we're still looking for additional funding grants for that Phase 2 of S-17. Okay, and here we are at that similar table for stormwater. Like I'd indicated here where it says that 2023 beginning fund balance, at the bottom there it says assumed for capital. There's a lot of variables that inform the beginning fund balance for stormwater, not the least of which is maintenance and operations costs. So that, I will leave it at that. Again, similar format, the orange and blue indicate whether there's been a schedule or a funding change. Like I mentioned, Landcastle just bumped out a year, so that's why it has the $170,000 was planned in the 2022 budget, and don't think we'll spend any of that. It'll start in 2023. Similarly, we had planned to complete the Phase 2 final design for S-17 in 2022, and now I'm projecting to finish that in 2023. So that's the blue in that first top row up there. And I think that is the main point here. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Bronze on stormwater? Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Director Braun, so the numbers we're seeing on this screen, like I mentioned earlier, that assume we're not, there's no debt incurred to create these numbers, right?
That's correct. And the third line down below in the revenue table, it says anticipated loans, and it's zeroed out. Whereas last year we had $80,000 in there. You're welcome. Another to point out, anticipated grants to pursue, the previous slide here. So we have $180,000 grants that are in hand. So that's essentially this 196. There's a portion of another grant in there that I didn't highlight. And then the next year, the 1.5 million, that 1.5 of that total is a grant that we're currently applying for, so it's not in hand yet. I just wanted to call out the distinction between the two. So similar to the parks, we have right here a 1.7, at the end of 6 years, a $1.7 million, I wouldn't call it surplus, but just ending fund balance. But if we don't get that grant, then that would make a big dent in that.
Thank you. Councilmember Lakota, go ahead, please.
So Director Bronze, the one that we are seeing in our packet, Exhibit 4, that looks slightly different from the one that you're flashing on the screen. I'm looking at.
Should just have the highlights. It should be the only difference.
So over here I have a grant of 196,532 and then 2.54 for 2024. So is this packet updated?
Sorry, just a moment, please.
Looking
Did
at
you say Exhibit 2 or Exhibit 4? Exhibit 4?
page 41 of 44. Exhibit 4, yeah.
The draft chart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see that.
Notice, like
correct,
even the
yeah.
cash flow and deficit is also different.
It looks, and I apologize for that.
Looks like maybe
Oh.
just a typo.
I know what it is. I assumed additional grant funding, and anyway, I don't need to explain the mechanics behind it, but what happened is I assumed additional grant funding for the S-17 beyond the 1.5 that we've applied for. So I think I applied, there's another $1 million in, or let's see, I think the only, difference is $1 million.
Yeah, the last line, the cumulative cash flow, is also different.
Right, because that's just the sum. So the one on this should be just a matter of how much grants you assume. The expenditure total is the same. So it's just a matter of where the revenue comes from. The difference is a $1 million assumed grant for the S-17. That's the difference. So I apologize for that. So the difference, so if you look at the 6-year total, the 7,259, that is unchanged. The 2023 anticipated expenditures and revenue is unchanged. The difference occurs right in the anticipated grants for 2024. There's an additional $1 million assumed right there. And then that propagates through the table. The slide is more conservative than the packet. The packet assumes 2 grants, neither of which we have in hand. The slide assumes 1 grant that we don't have in hand. I guess I should say the caveat being is that we've assumed in the rate study, as well as just our plan moving forward, is that we're not going to initiate construction of that project without significant grant funding in hand. So that being said, it's not like if we don't get grant funding, we're still going to move forward with that project anyway. We'll just hold on that project till we have adequate grant funding. Is that clear? And again, I apologize for that clerical error on my part. But that's the only difference, is there's the packet shows an additional $1 million assumed for grant funding for the S17 project.
Okay.
But the assumed expenditures are the same.
Thank you. Further questions?
One more question, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
The rate, the second line, this rate-funded capital assumes that we were going to pass the rates tonight, right? So this
Yes.
is already baked in, that's.
Correct. Yes, thank you for highlighting that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so those revenue lines are from the 2020 rate study.
All right, any additional comments for Director Bronze? I won't ask you to move anything ahead on this one. I'll go easy on you. But I'm thrilled about the Lake Bourne on the horizon. That's very near and dear to my heart. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So perfect. If there's no further questions, and again, I apologize for that error. I'm embarrassed about that. Next time we'll see these will be in part of the preliminary or the proposed 2023 budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Bronze, for all your work tonight and all of your presentations. I know it was no easy task putting all of that together, so I appreciate that. Okay, we will move on to additional public comment. Any members of the audience wishing to speak tonight? And seeing none, how is the virtual world?
It is all accounted for with no indication for public comment, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Planning calendar. City Manager Larson, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, and again, our viewing audience. I'm going to go through it a little bit more delicately. We can cover some more detail on the front end here. As you know, we've got the special council meeting of June 28th has already been covered. Happy Independence Day, belatedly to a few of you. Hope you had a great weekend. The regular council meeting tonight, of course. And then the Community Activities Commission meeting will be next Wednesday, July 13th. And then right below that, it says City Council Special Meeting. That's we're preparing in anticipation of the city manager candidates at an executive session. There'll be, of course, the reception on July 18th, which is Monday night, which the mayor has already alluded to. And then July 19th will be a full day for council here, as well as staff. And anticipating, if assuming all things go well, if you will, with the candidates, that the council will meet immediately after the lunch in executive session. That's what we're planning on doing, rather than waiting till later in the day for the regular council meeting. Well, it's fresh in everyone's mind as to the results, if you will, or at least the deliberations can proceed on the city manager candidates. And then if it needs to, it could also carry over to the regular meeting on Tuesday, the 19th, that same evening. Happy to announce again that the concerts in the park are resuming on Wednesday, July 20th at Lake Bourne Park. And then the following day, the Finance Committee will be meeting on July 21st at 2 p.m. here at City Hall. And then the regular Planning Commission meeting will be on July 27th. That's a Wednesday. And it looks like July 19th, the regular council meeting agenda as it stands now is fairly light, but we've got a week or so for staff to bring forward any agenda bills. We'll see what happens between now and next Tuesday. And then August 2nd is the regular council meeting, as council has already approved the canceling of that meeting in lieu of National Night Out. Hope everybody can partake in your own neighborhoods or around the community with that wonderful event. And then there's a few other items here. Following up, we've got tentative dates for the pandemic relief plan of August 16th. That could well move into perhaps early September, dependent upon council's desire to pursue that issue. We're not in any particular hurry, but certainly want to be very deliberative about how we approach the pandemic relief plan. And then there'll be some other items up for the August 16th meeting, which are fairly routine. But I also just want to just quickly go back to the budget calendar, and just to say thank you to the council members for your flexibility in getting the two meetings of August 27th, and it looks like October 22nd, getting those scheduled. Of course, this budget calendar, we tried to meet the statutory deadlines, if you will, or requirements in most of the cases, but also there's some flexibility within hopefully these ensuing months for council and the staff to work through the 2023 budget. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the planning calendar? Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you. City managers, maybe I misunderstood. We have the July 18th, the community meeting for the open house, but it says executive session to be determined. Is that something that's going to happen before July 19th? Did I misunderstand?
No, the July 19th is the anticipated date for having the candidates here, and if council's we'll schedule executive session in anticipation of council wanting to deliberate the candidates immediately
July
following
19th.
lunch. Right.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. Thank you.
Okay.
And then city clerk put out a good note or a memo about getting stuff from the planning calendar to the agenda. So I would just like to say a word about that. I mean, there's a number of items that are, unscheduled. And even though he put out this memo, it's still not completely clear to me how we say we want this issue on this date. And so could you speak to that a little bit, or what does Councilmember Lakoti and I are anxious to get an item that we put on here, homelessness. But, how do I say, all right, this is the date it's gonna be? That's where I'm at with that.
Sure. I wouldn't say I left it purposely vague, but I also wanted to leave it to the discretion of the council as to how you want to approach this. This should be ultimately a council decision as to how you want to move things off of the planning calendar, and I would suggest some type of a study session wherein you can talk about that and perhaps come to some perhaps a procedure or potential policy that council could want to obviously observe. But right now it's not clear, and I think that's what the purpose of that memo was, to talk about the idea that council should meet and discuss it. As of right now, we can certainly move these things forward, but it's left to certain discretion. I think it should be ultimately a council-full decision on the matter.
Yeah, I also want to note that some of the items requested to be added to the planning calendar require a lot of in-depth research on the part of our legal team, on the part of other departments, whether it be development or police or public works. We want to make sure that when they are brought forward, all of the information is available to us so we can make an informed and, of course, very legal decision. So there's a lot to consider on the other side of it, and I just ask that council be aware of that.
Yes, I understand that, Madam Mayor. I mean, clearly, we're not going to surprise the staff with some unexpected thing, but in order for us to give direction to the staff, it seems to me that, we would need to get it on an agenda so we could say, this is why we're talking about it. Otherwise, the planning calendar at every meeting would become a long general discussion. So that's my concern, right? I don't expect that we would bring this up and that there'd be an immediate action. I mean, I'm clear about that, but in order to let us know, or let you know what we want to do, so we're stuck now, right? Honestly, we're stuck on the planning calendar, and we don't have a way to get it up so we can say, what are we interested in doing? That's where I'm kind of feels like I'm spinning my wheels. So that's, like, we should need some clarity, maybe as a group, like the city manager says. I'm open to suggestions, but without that mechanism, these things will remain unscheduled, it seems to me. And there's another one where Councilmember Charbonneau and I have, and so on, and other people have, and it just, that's where I'm at.
Well, and a lot of this is a result of not having a council retreat this year. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Excuse me. Sorry, I lost my train of thought listening to that. What was I going to say? Oh, I was going back to the budget calendar. I just wanted to point out to council the goals column is really helpful for me to really understand for council what's expected from each during each part of the process. So I would encourage you to, ask questions about those goals and just to be prepared for each meeting. And then there was one other thing I was going to say, but I can't remember now. Sorry, my head's a little fuzzy. Nope, I lost it. I'll defer.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Dewing. A year ago, the homelessness was brought up, and we were told it wasn't an issue, that we had things in the books to take care of it. We really don't. We need an ordinance, and the state and county issued a ruling that we needed to have our ordinance filed by September 30th of 2021. We didn't do that. So it appears that we don't have a way of handling the homeless people now. If an issue comes up, we can't chase them out of the park. We can't boot them out because we don't have any ordinance to do that with. And that was the purpose for us having an ordinance. So here we sat a year later, nothing on the books.
Okay. Oh, Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I remember what I was going to ask. I see the Lee property development agreement unscheduled on here, and I think we've all been receiving some emails from the public, and I'm just wondering. I just want to be clear about ex parte. Is this a quasi judicial situation? I just don't want to get in any trouble before I respond to anything.
I can talk with you tomorrow about that, Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. Councilmember Charbonneau?
Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up for City Manager Larson. Were you planning to sort of schedule that item of sort of the process that we were talking about of how something moves from planning calendar forward, or was this just re-proposing that idea to us? What was the status of that?
Thank you, and I should have finished my thoughts earlier. I would suggest or propose, recommend to council a couple of things. You need to get a new city manager on board. I can certainly take you through a process whereby you'd have I would encourage a study session. A lot of the items that are on here would be more conducive to discuss in general, and not necessarily have it in open session, but you can have it in open session wouldn't be a regular council meeting. Might take in council meetings that you normally would conduct city business through an agenda process. When you actually have action items, these items on here are in general, the majority of them are discussion items, and it would reflect, perhaps the discussion would reflect the direction council would like to move, and then staff could entertain the idea of bringing back perhaps some policies, or at least do some research on those, and then bring them back for further discussion, and eventually they might end up being an agenda bill. But I would recommend that. But at this time, we're trying to get a budget developed. You're trying to hire a new city manager. And I would encourage you to consider, again, having a study session to talk about these items that could perhaps be items for study sessions. You haven't had that discussion. As the mayor pointed out, it really should have been reflected on, or at least discussed in a retreat earlier in the year, or at least a planning session to talk about strategic goals and objectives. That's my normal experience. But absent that, I would encourage you to first maybe perhaps bring a new city manager on board so you can develop a process with that person so that everybody's comfortable with that. We certainly can take it forward otherwise, but you've got some fairly significant things you've done in the next couple of months, and I wouldn't necessarily want to take you away from those things while you're trying to decide what's on the planning calendar and what would come forward in a council meeting. That's my own perspective. But, you know, council as a majority, you could decide you want to bring these things forward. If the majority would like to do that, you can certainly vote on those. I wouldn't encourage that at this moment, but certainly that would be the will of the council as well.
Well, and I believe City Clerk White, who's not here tonight, does have a list of other council policies that need to be reviewed. And I would recommend that once we have a new city manager on board, that is, that's all, put into one discussion, one study session, and that conversation takes place. But we are in the midst of several big items we need to resolve by the end of the year. So, all right. With that, we are at adjournment, and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Ari,
No, thank you.
Ariana, before you leave.
Yeah.
Wednesday at
Yeah.
8:30.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Here, in person. Okay,
Got it.
thanks.